everybody. Welcome to another Thursday edition of Hawk Talk, our second of the semester. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in here on 91.7 The Edge WSUW Whitewater, and for everybody watching on the UWW TV live stream. Happy to have you here. We're fingers crossed having a full show today. Hopefully, no tornado warnings really on the radar. We should be able to last till 6 o'clock. But yeah, if anybody saw that, hope, everybody stayed safe. It seemed like, nothing really happened around the Whitewater area. But that was something. So it was quite the way to kick off our first week. But we are back, and we are here on this fine Thursday afternoon to talk about sports, all about sports. And we got a lot of different topics today. And we're going to start with a Warhawk thought. But first, gentlemen, how are we all doing today?
Having a great day. Class got canceled.
Like I said, my only class got canceled.
Yep.
So
A couple of classes get canceled.
Yeah, I'm doing fantastic. Hopefully, like you said, we don't have another tornado, to end the show.
Yeah, exactly. It's, you think you'd only have one of those in your time at Hawk
you would
Talk,
think,
but
yeah.
Hopefully that wind dies down outside.
Yeah, that's
that
bad out
Whitewater
there.
wind
it
is
is
crazy.
very windy today, yeah. All right, well, that's great to hear that we're doing good on this Thursday. I am as well. Excited for the weekend, as always, and I'm also excited because today they officially announced that the College Football 25 video game is going to be coming out this summer. Very exciting news because we haven't had a college football licensed video game since 2013, which was the NCAA Football 14. So it's been quite a long time, but we are finally back, and I'm hoping that EA does it justice, but that's going to lead us right into our Warhawk thought. And I thought it'd be a good idea to ask everybody if you are excited for the college football video game coming out, and what are some of the most memorable sports video games you've ever played? What were some of those favorites? Because, not every 2K, not every Madden, not every NHL, FIFA, whatever you play, not everyone is made the same. Some are great, some are not so great. So we'll just go around the room, and here's some memorable sports video games, but also start off with, are you excited for college football? We will start with Alex.
I can't say I'm overly excited for it. I'm most likely going to get it, but I never grew up playing those NCAA or Madden games. I just, I was never really into it. Thought they were kind of slow paced.
The football game, yeah, that's a fair comparison. I mean,
It's like
especially
playing
the game like a
FIFA to me.
2K, yeah. But some of your most memorable games that you've played, obviously, if you aren't a big Madden person.
I have 2K17 and NHL Slapshot. Both great
very good games, yeah.
Especially Slapshot on the Wii. Just like that 3-on-3, huge hit, fast paced. Loved it.
Wii hockey was something else. I don't know about you guys, but if you ever played Wii hockey, like Wii NHL games were just absolutely phenomenal because you'd actually be able to, control it and stuff. And I don't know, they were awesome. They were better than the other NHLs and the Xbox or PS4, in my opinion. But over to Colin. Colin, are you excited about this college football video game and some of your memorable games?
yeah, similar to Alex, I didn't grow up on those NCAA games, but I am excited just because it's cool to see some of your favorite college teams and players that you wouldn't normally see in a video game.
Yeah.
And get to play with them, especially if you're from a state like I am, Arkansas, where there's no pro team. Getting to play with the Hogs and that is going to be awesome. But two of my favorite sports games, and it sucks that Alex went first because I have almost the same answer as him, but 2K17 is just such a great game. I believe that came out when I was in 6th or 7th grade, and I would always get home, hop on with my buddies, we would go dominate on Park. I just thought the dribbling and shooting was so smooth in that game. You could green bean everything if you had the timing down, and I just wish some of these recent 2K games with the great graphics could have mechanics like that because it was just so smooth.
They ruined it in 2K18.
Yeah, and also, I'm going to say NHL 11 specifically because I was at a Goodwill in Madison when I spotted this for $2, something like that, super cheap. Bought it. Me and my buddy will just get on and just wait for a dead moment in the game and just you spam Y for me on Xbox and you just go start a fight with somebody. And it's kind of like a UFC game and an NHL game in one, but those NHL games are super fun.
Yeah, there's a lot to do in them, and that is the specific one that I had growing up with, the NHL 11 one. Very fun. Over to Zach. Zach, your favorite games, and are you excited for this college football game?
Yeah, I would say I'm pretty excited. Like you said, being able to play with some players that, you wouldn't usually be able to play with is going to be great. I am a little bit skeptical, however. I think that EA might not do a justice like we would like to see. But just moving on to one of my favorite sports games. For me, it's Madden 11. There's an elite soundtrack on the Wii, to specify. Elite soundtrack, a lot of rock songs. I'd be playing franchise mode, till 6 in the morning. I always played with my dad when I was younger, every weekend, until I got too good at it, and then beat him all the time, and then you stop playing. So, but that for sure is one of my favorite games.
Awesome. Yeah, Madden 11 had, I think, the best soundtrack out of any Madden game that they've ever released. So it's a good pick there. Over to Mason.
My favorites probably NCAA 14 and then Madden 05, putting a kind of date on it. To talk about the upcoming NCAA college football game, I kind of agree here with Zach. I don't trust EA to really do the best job with it. I wrote down, please don't screw it up, because I played hours upon hours of NCAA 14. They've taken several key factors of what I loved about franchise mode from games like Madden 05 out of franchise mode. They've put a lot of resources into Ultimate Team instead. I am praying they do not do the same thing with this college football game.
Yeah, I agree. As somebody who, that's the reason why I get a lot of Maddens. I do play some Ultimate Team, but I am a big franchise person. And just seeing the downhill spiral of franchise has been so sad. And I'm glad that they're putting a little more attention into it now, but it's just nothing like it was. I am excited for the college football video game. I do think that's going to be pretty good. I don't think that EA, it's going to be. I think people also maybe have their expectations set a little too high. It's not going to be like 14. I think that there's going to be some key factors missing.
I'm really intrigued to see how they do with NIL and transfer portal.
Yeah.
That's my biggest, how are they going to do this?
And I hope that they, really put a lot into that process, because that would be a lot of fun to try to start a dynasty in college football. One thing I am excited for, which they have confirmed they're bringing back, is the mascot mode. I don't know if anybody has ever played college football video games remembers that, but used to be able to take two mascots from the school, and that's your whole team, and you just play against each other. So it'd always be the Syracuse Orange, because they're so hard to bring down, and I don't know. It was always the Badgers against the Syracuse Orange for me, but that mode is really fun. I love the mascot mode. So I am excited for it to come out. As far as my favorite games, I grew up on Madden 07. That was the first Madden game I was introduced to. That was the game my dad had with Sean Alexander on the cover. And something about that game that I always vividly remember is the training the training drills you could do. There was these moving dummies almost, and you had to run through them, and there was just so many different in-depth training and practice that you could do, compared to where now it's you do one drill and that's your whole practice for the week if you're on franchise mode. But NBA 2K17, that was one of my favorite 2Ks. And give a little love to the backyard baseball games. Those were always a lot of fun when I was a kid. And also, I hope that this, with bringing football back, it means they're going to bring back NCAA basketball, because I was a big fan of NCAA basketball 06, which I think was the last one they released. No, I think they released one. They've released some prior to that, but that was one of the bigger ones. So some memorable video games. Take a nice trip down memory road there, and hope that College Football 25 lives up to the hype of coming back out for the first time in over 10 years here. We're going to move on to our first topic now, and that is open the off-season floodgates, because the NFL season is officially done. First off, how are we all feeling about the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl here? I mean, can't say I'm surprised, but
It's inevitable.
Yeah.
That's about all you can say.
yeah.
It was really just a game of play caller versus play caller. It was just so many situations where Spagnuolo just threw the Wolves, threw a blitz at Purdy, and he just couldn't. Because Purdy, he can't decipher a blitz at the line. He can't check. Whereas Mahomes, he can see it, and he's just oh, check out of that, check into this. It was really interesting to see that.
Well, one of the worst calls in that game was the blitz that the Niners brought, where they brought 7 dudes
On
on
the
a
mesh.
third down.
Yeah.
And it's just what are you doing? Mahomes is going to buy enough time to check out of that and throw something short, and I don't know. As soon as the Niners kicked the field goal and the Chiefs got the ball back, I was like, this is game over. They're going to march down the field and score a touchdown. It's inevitable, like Zach said. But nonetheless, the Chiefs are Super Bowl champions, and our thoughts at Hawk Talk obviously go out to everybody that was affected with the incident that happened at the parade yesterday. But besides getting too much into that, we'll get now into the NFL offseason because there's a lot to talk about. Everybody's 0-0 now. And there's a lot of key free agents that are going to be out on the market. We're talking about guys like Kirk Cousins. We're talking about guys like Chris Jones, who just won a ring with the Chiefs. Josh Allen with the Jaguars, not the Bills quarterback. Jalen Johnson, we saw, got released. There's T. Higgins. You're talking about on offense, T. Higgins, wide receiver, Mike Evans, both free agents. So there's a lot of different guys out there that could be moving around. Now, what's the reality that they're all going to be moved? Probably not great, but that's what we're here to talk about. So we're going to start with maybe the biggest one, and that is Kirk Cousins, quarterback, maybe the most influential free agent this season, because if somebody else can get him, I mean, he still, I would say, has a few impactful years left under him. He was a decent quarterback till he got hurt. So Kirk Cousins, where do we think he's going to go? We'll start over here in the fishbowl with Mason.
I'm just going to say probably sticks in Minnesota. I think that O'Connell and Kwesi, their GM, they're going to know that they're kind of in that middling tier, and starting over with a rookie, whether it be, I don't think they're going to be able to trade up and snag a Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels. You're going to be stuck in that kind of McCarthy, Bo Nix range. I think Kirk is better than those guys right away. I know Kirk's got a kind of a reputation for being that kind of mid-tier, C-tier quarterback, and I don't necessarily agree with that. I think he did a fantastic job the last 2 years. Along with that, you got two really good receivers and a tight end. They got to kind of figure out their running back issue there a little bit, but their defense was really good to start last year. Kept kind of pushing and pushing and pushing. You to kind of see that Brian Flores factor there. I think Minnesota, with the injuries, they were still kind of fighting for wins down the stretch with Josh Dobbs and Nick Mullins at quarterback. So I personally think Kwesi kind of forks up a little bit of cash, which Cousins is kind of prone to get a bunch of contract money. So that's just me. I think he personally stays in Minnesota.
All right, over to Zach.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm going to have to disagree with Mason. I believe that Kirk Cousins is going to move on. He's 35, just coming off an Achilles tear. We haven't really seen anybody come back from an Achilles tear from the quarterback position and play as well as they did before. So I think his age is definitely a factor. A lot of people forget, and coming into this last draft, the Vikings actually heavily tried to pursue Anthony Richardson. And I think with the amount of quarterbacks and the amount of quarterback talent in the draft, I think they're going to try and go for one of these top quarterbacks where they would have to pay him less money and to pair with a Justin Jefferson type, huge wide receiver talent. So I personally think they're going to go for a younger quarterback in the draft.
Who do you think Kirk Cousins goes to then? If he doesn't go to Minnesota, what teams do you think could snag him up?
Well, popular spots for quarterbacks are the Falcons and the Steelers. He seems kind of like a Steelers quarterback for whatever reason. Obviously, the Steelers just hired Arthur Smith, which I didn't like the hire. I thought that was a really bad call, but he seems like someone who would go to the Steelers.
Okay, Pittsburgh, Kirk Cousins could be headed your way. Over to Colin. Colin, where do you think Kirk Cousins is going to end up after free agency settles?
I could definitely see them keeping Kirk around. I think they have some questions to consider. I mean, how much guaranteed money and how many years do you want to give to a guy that is such a big question mark right now at 36, coming off an Achilles tear? Is he a guy who's going to come back and be the same or a better quarterback than before? I don't know, but is he still a better option than what you have where you are in the draft if you're the Vikings? I think so. So I could definitely see them trying sort of that mentor route where they keep Kirk around for a couple of years, either this year, next year, draft a rookie quarterback and let him learn under Kirk, and then let that guy take over once he's got some years of learning and not trying to throw a guy right out there. I think that's their best option.
Yeah, I mean, that definitely seems like something that, I feel like more teams are going to try to do, especially after, everybody was talking last year or this past season about like how the Packers keep developing all these good guys. And it's like,
I think more teams should do that.
Well, yeah, it's like, it's kind of common sense. You get a halfway decent veteran to, have that quarterback learn under, doesn't have the pressure being thrown in there right away. And naturally, they're going to pick some more things up.
How many times do you see teams draft a quarterback in the first round and expect him to go out there and be an MVP right away? And then as soon as he's not, he gets all the criticism, starts bouncing around the league.
Right.
So I think.
And it's like a lot of the teams that take those quarterbacks, are in desperate need of a quarterback and like want somebody to save them. And like 9 times out of 10, it just doesn't work. I mean, and it's like not even their fault. You know, you look
Yeah.
at Bryce Young,
Exactly.
who just had an awful O-line this year, and it's like, you know, anybody would be doing bad there because he doesn't have any protection. He
no
doesn't really
weapons.
have a ton of people to throw to. You know, it's rough sledding for him, and I feel like that's how a lot of quarterbacks kind of get bounced early from leagues because then they start bouncing the worst teams, and they either don't get another opportunity or they get an opportunity on another bad team, and they just never get the full chance to show, you know, what really happened to them. Hot take, I think that's what happened to Josh Rosen. You know, if we remember him, who got drafted to the Cardinals and then, you know, kind of tumbled down, had that famous quote about how all those other teams were going to be sorry. And but I mean, it's happened to many different guys. You can name a lot of examples. But over to Alex, where do you think Kirk Cousins winds up?
I think he's staying with the Vikings. He had a pretty strong first 8 games to the season. Him and Justin Jefferson, where they just looked in sync. So yeah, I think they're going to keep him around. Probably what Colin said: draft a rookie quarterback and go kind of the mentor route, similar to Jordan Love, Aaron Rodgers. It's like I said, him and JJ just have great chemistry. You still have Thielen there.
Oh, Thielen's on
Or
the
not
Panthers
Thielen,
now.
not
They got
Thielen.
Addison now.
Yeah, I meant what's their tight end's name?
Hawkinson.
Hawkinson,
Yes,
yeah.
Hawkinson. Thank you. They just have good chemistry together, so I think, like I said, they'll keep him around and draft a rookie quarterback.
Yeah. I could definitely, yeah, I agree. I think that is the most likely possibility. I think that Kirk Cousins has kind of, you know, settled down in Minnesota. He really likes the city, really likes the team. So it would seem like Minnesota would really have to kind of lowball him, I think, for them to, or for him to move on. And, you know, I think that's the best option. Minnesota to draft somebody that they think is good, you know, for them to take Kirk Cousins on a 2 or 3 year contract, let the guy sit behind him for a while and learn under Kirk Cousins, and eventually either let Kirk Cousins go or he retires with Minnesota or what have you. If he weren't to stay, I could actually see him going to Denver. I think that with the Broncos, it still seems like they're going to release Russell Wilson. I don't know how you could keep him after that whole bombshell report came out last year. And so that'll be another big free agent that we'll talk about here in a minute. But, you know, if Denver releases Russell Wilson, who do they have? Jarrett Stidham, you know, like, and they're not super high in the draft position to, again, take one of those big guys. So I could see him landing in Denver if for some reason he were to leave Minnesota. But next we'll stay on quarterbacks. And again, this is going to be a potential free agent because he's not technically a free agent yet. But for all intents and purposes, he will be a free agent. That's Russell Wilson. And there's a lot of intrigue here because there's a lot of different spots he could end up. Pittsburgh, again, in availability. Atlanta is a big spot that they're talking about him going. There's other, you know, if Minnesota were to move on from Kirk Cousins, Minnesota could be a potential spot. So there's a lot of opportunities out here for Russell Wilson. Where do you think he winds up? We'll start with Zach.
I personally would love to see him in Atlanta. I know that Atlanta's a popular spot for Justin Fields, but if they don't get Justin Fields, I would love to see him in Atlanta. I just think that Atlanta, they've been so middle of the road, so mediocre these past couple years,
Yeah.
but they have elite weapons. Bijan Robinson, Kyle Pitts, Drake London. I think that they kind of need that veteran presence, that veteran leadership. And I still think he does have a couple good years in him. I think that kind of got a bad rap. He did play really well last year, honestly. A lot of people don't really talk about it. Kind of an underrated season from him. So I think that if he goes to Atlanta, I think he can do some special stuff.
I agree. I think that he actually had a very underrated season. And, you know, I think that a lot of what to blame in his time at Denver was actually on head coaching, especially, you know, his first year with Hackett, but even Sean Payton last year was really not the best of play callers. Over to Colin, Russell Wilson landing spots.
Yeah, I think the Steelers aren't a bad option either. If you look at their quarterback room right now, they've got Kenny Pickett, Trubisky, Mason Rudolph.
They actually released Trubisky too, so that's one less guy there.
Either way, not guys you want as your number one option if you're going to be a contending team. And the Steelers haven't been a contending team, but they have been in the conversation without a stellar quarterback for a long time now. And I think throwing a guy like Russell Wilson in there, I think he would gel perfectly with Mike Tomlin. And I think their offense would be a great system for a guy like Russell Wilson. And like you guys were saying, the head coaching disputes when he was on the Broncos, that was a big problem. And a lot a lot of the blame was on Russell Wilson for the way he was playing, but if you got to look deeper than that, he's not a bad quarterback. You can still go to a contending team and make a difference. So I think the Steelers would be the best fit. You could go to the Commanders. Patriots could sign him on a short-term deal and try and bridge that gap until they can get their guy. But I think the Steelers makes the most sense for him.
Yeah, those seem to be the top two contenders, is Atlanta and Pittsburgh. But do you have a case for either one of those, Alex, or maybe somebody else?
I was gonna say New England as well. I think.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah,
Mac Jones just looked incredibly weak all season.
Not their guy.
I don't know. They just seemed like they had a very, very weak offense. Obviously, they finished towards the bottom of the pack. Not even a veteran coach like Belichick could figure that out. So I think bringing in, I almost said Wilson, Russell Wilson. I think bringing him in would do them a lot of good, especially a deep playoff run quarterback like that.
and maybe some positivity too, because they just had that report that came out that their quarterback room is so toxic that like Bailey Zappi would go watch film with the wide receivers and like
Patriots country, let's ride.
that's just crazy. But yeah, I mean Patriots. I didn't even really think about that one, but that is definitely a viable option for a guy like that. Over to Mason, where do you think Russell Wilson ends up?
I'm going to go with Pittsburgh. I feel like it's kind of similar to what he actually had while he was in Seattle, kind of this culture guy as your head coach in Tomlin. You've got weapons with Pickens and Deontay and Freiermuth, and hopefully Arthur Smith gets Darnell Washington involved a little bit, whether that is blocking or actually in the receiving game. They've got some offensive line worries, kind of like he did have in Seattle during his heydays. He's got two good running backs with Najee and Jalen Warren. Defense is really good. I feel like, obviously, Pittsburgh was a 7 seed this year with, that cluster of quarterbacks. But for me, is it Russ for a year or two, and then you got to make that decision on Kenny Pickett, which I was not a Kenny Pickett guy, but you got to make your decision on Kenny Pickett. But I feel like the defense is too good right now to kind of waste this talent, so you got to get somebody that will try to actually put this team to where they could potentially hit their ceiling. And I honestly don't think that Russ was that bad last year until that primetime game against, I think it was New England. I'm not 100% sure which one it was, but I think Russ is a good fit for this team.
I think realistically, my option that I see him fitting best in and where he would pick would be Atlanta. I think that there is a little bit more intrigue with younger stars, like a Bijan Robinson. You still got Algier there. Obviously Drake London, Kyle Pitts. You got a lot of attractive targets there. Not to say that Deontay Johnson or George Pickens or any of that is not. But I think that Atlanta would be his most realistic option. But I just want to throw kind of something a little bit crazy out there maybe. This is not what I think will happen, but I'm just kind of, putting out there as a hypothetical. What if Chicago were to move on from Justin Fields, trade him, you sign Russell Wilson, and then you draft Caleb Williams and let Williams develop under him for a few years? Honestly, wouldn't be the worst route to go, because if you remember when Russell Wilson was a free agent last time, a couple years ago, Chicago was one of his number one options to go to. He was kind of big on the Bears, zeroing in on them, and he ended up going to Denver. But, Chicago, if you, say, hey, come here, play for a couple years, and then they draft Caleb Williams and, try to do it right instead of throwing Caleb Williams out there right away, or either letting him develop under Justin Fields, which, what are you going to learn from Justin Fields? But I don't know. It's a situation I don't think will happen, but it's just kind of like a what if, is that something that could possibly happen that, are the Bears even eyeing him up at all? But Atlanta and Pittsburgh, I think, are definitely probably the two most realistic options. New England, kind of a wild card, because I don't know. I don't think that they can, they'd take a big cap hit if they release Mac Jones. But that's just the thing is, I don't know who they're going to go with, if they're going to try to draft another quarterback or if they're going to try to pick up a veteran. Who knows what's going to happen there. All right, we'll have time for one more free agent, and then we're going to just kind of quickly move on to the other parts of the offseason, touch on them quickly here, and move on to our next topic. So give me one free agent that you're keeping an eye on that we did not mention, where you think they'll go, and why. I'll start with that.
Joe Flacco.
Where do you think he's going?
I'm going to say Atlanta or maybe Cleveland will keep him around. Deshaun Watson's not the strongest quarterback, and there has been some legal trouble surrounding him. But I mean, Joe just came off like a couple game run with the Browns, averaging like 250 yards a game. His first start in week 13, I'm pretty sure they lost that one, but he kind of proved like, hey, I'm still here. So I think there's a lot to learn from Joe Flacco, bringing in a veteran quarterback again. So if they have a younger quarterback or they're about to draft another quarterback, having Joe Flacco at the helm probably is not the worst idea. So I'm going to say Atlanta.
Nice. I mean, Joe Flacco just had a big year. He clearly proved he can stay around in the league for a little bit still. Over to Colin.
I'm going to talk about Justin Matabuke for the Ravens.
Yeah, he's a big one.
I think he's a guy that the Ravens desperately want to keep around. And I'm not sure if he feels the same way. But they have to make a decision on him. Do they want to franchise tag him? Do they want to trade him? Do they want to just let him walk? And I think, when he was talking about it, he called Baltimore home, but he also said business is business. So he's clearly kind of either trying to get the most money out of the Ravens or trying to look around at his other options. But I think the Ravens will end up franchise tagging him just because he's so vital to their defense and their culture. And they're a defensive team at the end of the day, one of the best defenses in the league. And if they want to be back contending next year, they're going to need a similar defensive unit. So I think they'll do what they can to keep him around and franchise tag him.
Yeah, he's going to be a big defender to keep an eye on, one of the biggest ones. That's assuming Chris Jones, doesn't leave Kansas City. Because
I believe he...
did he resign with them?
Verbally. Was
There's a thing on there because he was obviously drinking when that occurred, and his agent actually went on Twitter and was like, please stop having them drink. So I don't know how to take that really.
Well, clearly, it seems like he wants to stay there, but his agent's probably doing that so he doesn't lose leverage or anything like that. So, but it would surprise me to see Chris Jones go anywhere. So I think he's probably going to be one of the bigger, if not the biggest defender in the free agent market this year that could realistically go somewhere else. Over to Zach.
Yeah, there's obviously a ton of huge names in free agency. You got Saquon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, even some big wide receivers, Mike Evans, T. Higgins, Michael Pittman. I'm going to go with a dude that is very, very underrated, definitely under the radar, DJ Reader, the D tackle from the Bengals.
Yeah.
He's consistently a fantastic run stopper, and he's consistently graded as one of the highest on PFF in terms of interior linemen. And we just saw, the impact that Chris Jones makes for a Super Bowl winning team. So I think that any team could use a really good run stopping D tackle. Where he'll go, I'm not sure. More than likely, the Bengals will sign him, but I think he is definitely someone to watch.
Another big defender for sure. Over to Mason.
I've got another defender. I'm going to go Patrick Queen, another one of those Baltimore players that really impacted their really good defense this year. It's going to be really interesting, on a side note, to see how Baltimore does with all these free agents. They also got Geno Stone as a free agent as well, which we haven't talked about yet. But Patrick Queen, that's actually who I wanted Green Bay to draft the year they drafted Jordan Love. I was a big Jordan Love fan, but I didn't expect the whole entire Rodgers future thing to come that year. But for me, I've actually got a team in mind for Patrick Queen already, and that is Seattle, where Ravens DC Mike McDonald went. Seattle is losing to free agency Jordan Brooks, Bobby Wagner, and Devin Bush, which is their top three linebackers. I know that Patrick Queen has kind of said that he does not like the market for him right now, which was, I think, about at $18 million per year, which is a lot for a linebacker, and it seems like he wants more. Seattle is currently at -$1 million about there in cap, so they're going to have to do some kind of finagling with that a little bit. But I really think McDonald needs a linebacker for his defense, and while there is some available in free agency, I really do feel like it's going to be Patrick Queen that goes to Seattle.
That would be an interesting fit there. It would be a different guy to kind of build around. I agree. I was a huge Patrick Queen fan when he was in the draft. I actually thought Love was I was like, we should draft Jordan Love because I really liked him. I thought he was super underrated. And I was like, at the time, everybody kind of thought Aaron Rodgers was bad because he was just coming off his worst year of his career. And obviously he went on to go have 2 more MVP seasons. But I was still a big fan of it, and obviously it's come to fruition now. Everything worked out in that sense.
I had Love as QB2 in that draft. I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah. My guy, I'm going to switch over to offense and talk a little bit about T. Higgins. I think that he could be one of the biggest wide receivers. I mean, because it seems like he's kind of done in Cincinnati. The only way I see him sticking around is if they franchise tag him. I think that that would be kind of the only possibility where he is able to stay in Cincinnati, because I just don't think that they're going to be spending, because T. Higgins could be a wide receiver 1 somewhere. Let's be realistic. He could be wide receiver 1. He is the wide receiver 2 behind Jamar Chase right now. And I think that he's done at Cincinnati. But there's a lot of different spots he could end up. They're talking about New England. They're talking about Carolina as a possibility. I've heard Green Bay thrown out there, although I don't think that that's all that likely. But there's a lot of teams that are in need of wide receiver that, obviously T. Higgins, I think, will be one of the bigger names out on the market. And another guy that I just quickly wanted to mention, or two guys actually, was running backs. Josh Jacobs and Saquon Barkley are both free agents, 2 of the top running backs in the NFL. Where are they going to go? How that's going to shake out is going to be very interesting, because obviously they had that whole thing last year where a bunch of them were holdouts because they weren't happy with the contracts they were getting. And who knows what it's going to be like this year, and who knows if we're going to see somebody like that sit out, because we saw like a Dalvin Cook, who was one of the top running backs just 1 or 2 years ago, have a dud year where he didn't do anything this season. And it was really kind of surprising to see him be a free agent for so long. But
I'd love to see Saquon in Houston with Stroud and all those guys.
that would be crazy. But do you think they're going to move on? I mean, Dameon Pierce, they just moved on from him so fast. It seemed
Yeah,
like
Singletary was better than Pierce this year, and Singletary's a free agent.
right.
So-
Yeah. I mean, that would be something, wouldn't it?
It'd
would
be such an insane offense.
Well, I think Houston's also a popular spot for T. Higgins as well.
Yeah.
I have a friend that's a huge Texans guy, and I know that he has been talking about T. Higgins like crazy, because obviously they have, I think, one of the highest cap
Yep.
available.
Yeah.
They're at 84, I think.
Yeah, this upcoming season. So I think that's definitely a popular spot for him too.
Well, and they have so many talented wide receivers already. You got to talk about like a Tank Dell is there,
Nico.
Noah Brown, Nico Collins. They got Dalton Schultz as their tight end. Like that wide receiving core is stacked. If they had T. Higgins, it would just be. And a Saquon Barkley. I mean, their offense, like their skill players, would just be out of this world. So yeah, definitely something to keep an eye on. But we'll touch base more on the draft and who we think we could kind of win it all in 2024. Another week. But we got to move on now to our next topic, and that is February Madness. And we're going to start talking about some college basketball, because we are getting down to the nitty-gritty. About halfway through February, March Madness is about to get underway. And, of course, that means brackets, busted brackets, all kinds of different things. And it's already happening with the chaos that has been college basketball in the last few weeks, where I think it was last week where more than half the teams in the top 25 lost at least once. And, you have teams like Wisconsin, who was number 6 a couple weeks ago, and they dropped 3 straight to teams that they shouldn't be losing to, and now they're down to 19, I think, and they lost a bunch of spots in the latest bracket predictions. But for starters, we're going to keep it simple. Championship favorites as of right now in college basketball, and there are a lot of teams to choose from. We'll start with Colin.
Purdue, Zach Edey. He's a senior now, 7'4", dominating college basketball for a couple years now. That offense looks so smooth, and they're just winning games left and right. There's a reason they're number 1, and I think that's going to roll on through the tournament.
Do you think that there's any, I don't want to say fear, but hesitation to kind of pick them with after what happened last year? Number 1 seed, they lose to a 16 seed, and they've been, they always look good in the regular season, and then they start choking a little bit, but they have been shown to be capable of going far. Do you think there's any hesitation there, or do you think they're in kind of for a rebound?
I think it's their time. I think they're due for one, especially after last year with that upset. I think they're hungry. I think they're going to go out there and get it.
Yeah, and I mean, Zach Edey, you don't want to, there's not a better guy you could have leading the charge for you. Over to Alex. Alex, your championship favorites.
My championship favorite this year would be Houston. 21-3 record so far. They have the top defense in college basketball. They're only allowing 55 points a game. They're also only holding their opponent's shooting percentage to 37%. So when you're playing a team like that, that's just making you constantly miss your shots, or they're just face guarding you the entire game. You're going to have trouble offensively, but they don't have trouble offensively because they also have a great offense. So they will score a lot of points on you and withhold you to under 55. And in college basketball, I mean, especially in the higher divisions, you're going to want to score a lot because it's how you win games. So I think Houston's going to make a deep run. They do pretty much every year. So
Yeah,
they're going to keep that trend going.
They've had a few very successful years, a couple Final Four appearances, and obviously they moved to the Big 12. That was a big knock on them the past few seasons, was that they're not playing in tough enough conference. Now they're in the Big 12, and they're doing really good, obviously still a number 1 seed. Over to Mason, your championship favorite right now in college basketball.
I'm going to agree with Houston. Just looking at the schedule, 2 of their 3 losses have come by a combined 5 points, and those were in a row against Iowa State by a loss of 4, and then they lost by 1 against TCU, who is also doing really well right now. I just got echoing the points, like their offense is really good and their defense is spectacular. Following this whole entire tournament for the last few years, I've been, a little bit of a Houston kind of closet fan a little bit. Obviously, Wisconsin comes first, but Houston's kind of been my pick a lot of the last few years and come up short a little bit, but I think finally this year is their year.
All right, over to Zach.
I personally have UConn as the championship favorite.
There we
repeating.
go. That's what I was waiting for.
You have a lot of guys that are returning. The backup center last year, Donovan Clingan, he has completely stepped up, averaging 12 points, getting 2.3 blocks per game. I think that they have shown that, they have experience, they have championship experience, they shoot well, they shoot at a 36.7 clip from 3, which obviously is extremely important. They're towards the top in both offense and defensive efficiency. I really don't know why the current bracketology has Purdue as the number 1 seed. I personally think they're frauds. Maybe that's the Wisconsin fan in me. Because I just think if you shut down Eddie, they have nobody else besides him. So I personally have UConn.
UConn was the one I was kind of waiting for because I would say that would be my championship favorite right now. As somebody who I didn't pick them to win, but I had them in the Final Four in a couple brackets last season when they were like that 4 seed, and they were just kind of under the radar all season long. They caught fire at the right time, and like you said, they got a lot of returning starters. They've looked real good this year. Only 2 losses on the season. And they've just been near the top all season long. They've been one of the best in the Big East, and they got a big matchup coming this week with Marquette. That's going to be a very fun one to watch because obviously Marquette also right near the top of the rankings. So I think they're actually 4 right now, if I'm not mistaken, 4 in the AP Top 25. But yeah, UConn is a big one. But a team I will throw out there that is they're like up there in seeding, but not like a 1 seed right now would be Auburn. Actually, I think Auburn has been red hot, and they just beat the brakes off Tennessee yesterday, I believe. Pretty sure it was Tennessee. But it was bad. They put up 100 points on a top 25 team, and or actually it was South Carolina, who got ranked 11th and has been doing really good. Beaten by 40 points. It was 101-61 over almost top 10 ranked team. It's just crazy. When they are hot, nobody can beat them, but that's the thing is, can they keep that pace? They have Final Four experience under Bruce Pearl. They went there in 2019. But I will throw out one other team, and that is Purdue. I will echo that because think back to 2019. What happened the year before that? Virginia, number 1 overall seed. They lose to UMBC, a 16 seed. Very embarrassing game for them. They come back and win it all the next year. And I just think Purdue's got a lot of those same guys. They're going to be hot. They're going to remember that and be hungry for a win. I will throw a few more teams out there for you guys to talk about. And one is a Wisconsin team, but it's not Wisconsin. It's Marquette. And like I said, they are the number 4 team ranked in the AP Top 25 poll. Very good regular season. Tyler Kolek, maybe the best point guard in all of college basketball. But Shaka Smart is the coach. He has a notorious record for losing in the first or second round every single year in the March Madness tournament, except for the first year when he brought VCU, which was like an 11 seed, kind of an underrated school, brought him to the Final Four, and since then has done pretty much nothing. And Marquette was a 2 seed last year. They lost in the second round to Michigan State. Do you think that they can kind of break through this year and get past that, are they a national championship contender or are they frauds? We'll start over here with Alex.
I think that all depends on if they beat UConn here in a couple days. I think that UConn game is extremely important leading into the tournament. 'Cause, if they win, they're knocking off one of the best teams in the tournament. So that's going to give them that confidence and that kind of boost of morale just to go to the next level, play at that next level. Looking here, they don't have that easy of a schedule coming up. They play UConn, Xavier, UConn again. So I think those games are going to tell. Are they going to tell if Marquette's really going to make it this year or not?
Yeah, and they have beaten some quality opponents lately. Seton Hall, which is a borderline playoff or a tournament team, they beat them in January, at the end of January by a lot. They just beat Butler the other day. Yesterday, actually, they beat them, or 2 days ago, sorry. Beat them by 6, and Butler's going to be in the tournament minus something, crazy happening to them where they just completely drop out. But those are good wins. They've had a lot of success, obviously, ranked number 4. But yeah, they got 2 games against UConn in the next, couple weeks here, and that is probably going to tell the story. But over to Colin, any different thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree that this game against UConn will tell a lot about this Marquette team. They've been up and down versus ranked teams. They've had some good wins, like when they beat Kansas early in the year. They also lost to Wisconsin. But they've beat some good teams. They've lost to some good teams. They beat number 17 Creighton. They, like you said, they beat Seton Hall. Butler beat them, then they came back and beat Butler. So when it comes to against good opponents, they've been almost 50-50. So this is the best opponent you could play, number 1 UConn. So we'll see how they look in this game and see if this game can get them some momentum going into this last portion of their schedule, which is very tough.
Pretty sure they beat Purdue earlier in the year, too.
Purdue beat them by 3 on November 22nd.
Yeah,
But close game
so
regardless.
3-point game there, and they lost to Wisconsin earlier in the year.
Beat Illinois.
But they have teams like win against Illinois, a win against Texas. They had a win against Creighton earlier in the season, who's going to be a tournament team. Villanova has been kind of on the bubble. They've been dropping down a little bit since then, but teams that are up there, they've been playing really good against them. But I think that the stretch where they're going to play UConn on Saturday, they get an easy game. What should be an easy game against DePaul. Relatively easy game against Xavier. Providence is always a thorn in the side, but then they get Creighton too on March 2nd, and then they play UConn at home on March 6th, and that will really be the telltale sign. But if they could somehow beat UConn on Saturday in UConn, it would be a mightily impressive win. That could bump them up to the 1 line. Any other thoughts for Zach Mason that differ here on Marquette?
Yeah, I really want them to go far. I want them to do well, but I kind of have a hard time imagining that they go far. They're a great team defensively, but their offense is just way too inconsistent. You do have 3 guys averaging over 14 points per game, but we've just seen last year they couldn't get their offense going, and that's why they lost. I just have a hard time imagining that the Big East competition translates to the tournament. I know we have a lot of top-heavy teams like the UConn, which will tell a lot based on how they play that game. But I think that I really want them to go far, but I have a hard time imagining that they can with how inconsistent their offense is.
Yeah. Mason, anything else to add?
Yeah, I think obviously the UConn game is going to be really just a sight to see, just to see if they're really going to be that 1 seed, that national contender, like so many of us have expected them to be. I've got friends there. I've got a lot of buddies that root for them on a daily basis, and they've just kind of been rolling with this kind of up and down nature of this offense. So they've kind of grown accustomed to it. They're obviously really excited about the defense going into the tournament, but I'm really excited to watch that game against UConn.
It's going to be a fun one on Saturday. And, that's kind of the nature of Wisconsin sports teams. Wisconsin basketball, the exact same thing. It's just been up and down all year. You get super stoked. They beat a lot of good teams. They get to be number 6, and then they just collapse. They blow a huge lead against Nebraska. They lose to Purdue. They're losing to Big Ten teams teams that they shouldn't be losing to, but should still be in the tournament. But before we close out this segment, One team that is right now in bracketology ranks relatively like anywhere from like 1 through 6 that is the most likely to get upset, aka like who's the biggest frauds. And we'll start with Zach.
Well, you know my stance on Purdue. If you don't mind, I would like to talk about Auburn.
Yeah.
You kind of stole my pick there. That was like my sleeper pick, just because they're so good defensively. And when you're picking a tournament team, you need a team that's good on offense, a team that's good on defense, and a team that can shoot, make
Yeah.
the free throws.
And they're top
that's what
10.
Auburn is.
They're top 10 in offense and defense adjusted efficiency. It's crazy.
Exactly. And that's basically been the trend for all the past winners is you need a good team defensively and offensively. Just going back to who I think could be frauds, I'm going to pick a different team besides Purdue. I would have to say... Sorry, I'm just going down the list here.
Yeah, no, it's okay.
I'd probably have to say... I would have to say Houston.
Really?
I know they're a really good defensive team, but I don't really think they play enough competition. I had them as the favorites last year. I thought they were going to win last year, but they just weren't able to get enough offense. Obviously, Sasser was hurt, which I understand, why they couldn't get enough offense. But I think that just not being able to, I get one thing with playing good defense. Obviously, you need that in the tournament. But if you can't generate enough points yourself, then I just don't see you winning.
Okay. Over to Colin.
I'm actually the team I think has the biggest probability to choke. I think I'm going to say Auburn.
Really?
They've been great, but recently they've been up and down. There was a stretch where they went 3-3, losing to Alabama, Mississippi State, and Florida. And in that same stretch, they beat Vanderbilt, Ole Miss, and also beat Alabama. But I think just recently, their defense has been letting up a lot of points versus teams that, you wouldn't want to let that many points up against, and they have been really good, but just these recent struggles make me think that, getting to the tournament, we could see some issues with them.
Yeah, I mean they have been very hot and cold, so that's a very fair take there. Over to Alex.
I know they're not like a number 1 ranked team right now, but Duke, pretty sure they're 4th overall. I feel like a main reason I'm saying this is because every other year there's a tournament, Duke is so highly hyped up going into it, and I haven't heard anything about them at all. I know they're 19-5 overall, but they are 4-3 on the road, so they're very inconsistent on away games. And looking at their schedule, they've had it pretty easy so far, and they've lost almost every ranked team they've played besides besides Michigan State, which is a lower ranked team. But I think Duke's gonna fall pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean that is a fair assessment. I mean they don't have the Coach K factor there anymore, so it's back then you couldn't like bet against Coach K, but now got a relatively new head coach there. They're still getting top prospects, but yeah, they're kind of underperforming this year. Over to Mason.
It pains me to say it, but like Wisconsin.
Yeah,
They've been super inconsistent as of late. They
kinda
just
what I was
got
waiting for.
kind of done with a 4-game losing streak, including a game against, Rutgers where they lost by 22 points to a team that's not even in the tournament right now. They beat Marquette, which was awesome to see, like for like a Wisconsin versus Wisconsin battle. That was a 11-point win. But if you look at like their losses against like their competition, like they got smoked by Arizona. I know that was obviously in December, but this run in February where they lost 4 of their first 5 games already this month, it's concerning heading into what should be, the time when their momentum is starting to pick up and head into the tournament.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. I think Wisconsin is one of the biggest upset potential teams there. I am also going to throw out, I know they're a little low right now because they've lost a lot, but Kentucky, I think Kentucky are major frauds this year, and they kind of got exposed recently. But I kind of have to take aim at some of these teams as much as it pains me when I see these like mid-major teams that are doing really good, but like a team like South Carolina's not a mid-major, but Colorado State, I think we saw it a couple years ago. They were a 6 seed. They lost to Michigan, and they're a 5 seed right now, 5-6 line. South Carolina is another team that I think is just getting way too much hype. They are doing very good, but just overall, they do not have they just don't have the it factor. Their defense and their offense are both kind of middling. They've had some really good upsets, but that's what is boosting them so high right now, and they're on like the 4 line everywhere. So it is kind of surprising to see them so high, but nonetheless, here they are. I think that they could be in for an upset. So yeah, that is our segment here on March Madness in February, and we will be watching the tournament as it goes down. Before we get into our next topic here, we got some news from the MLB actually, and that is Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred is announcing that he is going to step down from the job in 2029 when his contract ends. Not right away, unfortunately, but so some breaking news there. The Manfred area hopefully is going to be up soon. So, you got some.
Yeah, we also got some other breaking news. Mason just showed me that Danilo Gallinari is actually playing to sign with the Bucks. So I think that's a pretty good signing for the Bucks. Someone that can shoot. Obviously, he's a bit old, but it's interesting to see that move by the Bucks.
Interesting. Yeah, we only got about 5 minutes before we do final thoughts here, so I guess we're just going to kind of we'll pivot here. We don't have enough time to talk about what our last topic was going to be. That was like the midseason predictions for the NBA. We could save those for next week. But Gallinari to the Bucks, instant reactions, and we'll start with the man who saw it first. Over to Mason.
I don't necessarily know the most about him personally. Obviously, he's a veteran presence. He's been in the league for 14 years, especially right now with Doc coming in. There was kind of that first kind of initial wave of kind of a downward spiral. We kind of got a little bit of a pick-me-up, and then again, it was kind of just way down again. That was on, Tuesday night? Yeah, Tuesday night with that loss again. Obviously, like the Bucks, they're trying to be a national contender again this year, win the championship once more, and I think any move right now that, especially with a veteran like Gallinari, is a good move.
Zach.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's nice to have that veteran presence. I think that they're kind of loading up on vets here in the second half of the season just to see if they can keep that experience, hopefully get to the championship. But he is a career 38% three-point shooter, so that's definitely going to be good for the Bucks. Obviously, there's been some shooting struggles by Dame, which is unfortunate, but it's definitely nice to have a little bit of shooting. I think it's a pretty good signing.
All right, over to Colin.
Yeah, I don't know how much he's actually going to play for the Bucks, and I'm assuming they're signing him for the vets minimum. But just a good pickup, If you look back a couple of years ago, in 2019, he averaged almost 20 points a game with the Clippers, and for like 5 to 7 years prior to that, he was above 15 points a game on good shooting splits. So a good guy to have out there, pretty tall, can space the floor. I don't know much about his defense. I feel like it's underwhelming, but that's what we got Patrick Beverley for. So just another piece to have out there that can come in and make some shots. He recently played for the Pistons. He played 6 games this year for the Pistons and is shooting 58.3% from 3 so far. So hopefully he can keep up those numbers with the Bucks. I'd love to see that, but obviously this doesn't make the Bucks. This doesn't mean the Bucks are going to win the championship now.
Right. This isn't a major signing by any means.
I think it's a good pickup, and he'll get probably 10 to 15 minutes a game and put up some good numbers.
Alex?
I think Danilo Gallinari is notoriously mediocre. And I'm kind of saying that because I'm biased. Playing with him in 2K is just disastrous, first of all.
Dude's going off of 2K.
I mean, he was decent on the Hawks, I'll give him that, but, if you're getting traded to Detroit, you are notoriously mediocre, especially at, how old is he now?
He's
34?
getting passed around the league like
35?
crazy. Yeah, he's old.
Yeah, he's old. And he just lacks defense. I think he's only averaging 15 points a game, which is not horrible, but that's going to go way down getting on the Bucks with dudes like Giannis and Dame.
35 years old, by the way.
He's 35?
Yeah.
Yeah. He's only got a couple of years left. This probably will be one of his last 2 seasons. Where else is there for him to go? Who else wants him? The Pistons going to get him back?
Maybe he comes out and has a renaissance on the Bucks and they make him a starter and then he gets a big contract.
Yeah, right.
Probably not, but...
Yeah, I mean, my honest reaction is that it's not that big of a deal, probably. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think he's going to get that many minutes in the grand scheme of things. They really need a lot more defense, so getting, a hot three-point shooter, yeah, it helps, but I mean,
Who's he guarding?
I don't know. I just watched I went to the Bucks game the other night, and they were just atrocious.
Did you go to the one on Tuesday?
Yeah, I
I'm
went to
so
the one on
sorry.
Tuesday. Granted, the Heat were shooting lights out. Like, their three-point percentage was crazy. But one, our defense was awful, and two, we could not hit anything. I think at one point we were like 8 for 25 from three. It was just pathetic. So, I mean, I guess the three-point shooter, but yeah, I would probably lean more towards like the 10-minute mark of that range. I just don't think he's going to get a lot of minutes. They said he signed with the Bucks to get in his like frontline rotation, a possibility, but I don't know about that, buddy. I don't know about that.
Not even first option on the Pistons is like,
Yeah.
I didn't even know he was on the Pistons until I just.
Right, yeah. I mean, I kind of
always-
forgot about him. I remember him in the Hawks when he was in 2021 when we faced him. But
Apparently, he's been on 2 different teams since then, and
wow,
I haven't heard a lick about it.
yeah, he gets passed around the league.
He's only there
like
for
crazy.
shooting. That's all he's there for.
Yeah,
So.
he's kind of like a Kyle Korver. You bring in a
Yeah.
vet
Yeah.
to shoot the ball, like to just. It's almost like a pickup. Like throw him in there when we need a spark. He'll hit
Which,
a couple
yeah.
threes. He'll get us going and stuff like that.
Those guys always have a place in the league. The guys that are getting up there in age and might not have the athletic ability, but if you have that shot, you can still be of use to some team out there. So
Right.
you see a lot of guys like Kyle Korver, JJ Redick at the end of his career, just who may not go out there, start for you, give you big numbers, but they'll hit an open three for you. And if you're a championship team, you need guys that can hit open threes. So
Right. I mean, that's why
mad at it.
they get passed around the league so much because it's just like at the end of the season, you're just like, well, that was
What are we
fun.
gonna do
They're
with
like,
you
we're
now?
not going to
Give you any more
sign you a
money.
new contract. So then it's just like, oh, I'm going to be throwing around teams and, whoever I land with. So that's why I call it Korver, and now Gallinari probably has like 10 different jerseys of teams they've been with. So,
speaking of mediocre, Hassan Whiteside retired.
oh yeah,
yeah, I did see that.
moment of silence for his
Did see that. I'm
Right,
sure all
moment of silence.
three
Former
people.
Utah Jazz legend.
Yeah, I'm sure all three people at his press conference were clapping as he exited the stage. So, all right, on to final thoughts here. We made it. No tornado warning today.
Knock on wood.
We got
So,
4 minutes.
well,
Still
still got,
4
still
minutes.
got 3 minutes and 10 seconds here, I guess. So, but we at least made it to final thoughts. So that's farther than we made it last week. But going around the room, any final thoughts you have for us today, Alex?
Since we didn't really make the NBA midseason predictions, I'll just throw one of mine out there now. I have the Clippers and the Celtics in the finals, but I have the Thunder coach winning Coach of the Year.
Same.
That's
How could you not?
yeah. I mean,
how could you
I
not?
think that's he's locked up Coach of the Year. I think that.
Him
Yeah.
or the Timberwolves coach.
Yeah.
And possibly a Shea MVP.
I agree
Don't
with
steal
you.
all my takes now, Alex.
No, I got it.
Save some of them
Hey,
for
I
next
got 'em
week
here,
too.
I
We
got
might
'em
bring
here.
the segment
I got 'em
back
here.
next week. So save some of them. Save
got
some of
pages.
them. You
I
got
got
time to
pages.
think about it. Okay, on to Colin.
Well, I know that was a tough Bucks game that you went to on Tuesday, but they've got the
rough.
Grizzlies tonight, and that is a nationally televised game because when they made the schedule, they didn't know Ja was going to be out. So
Or their whole team.
hopefully, if you want to watch a free Bucks win, that'll be on tonight. But also,
Well, I don't know if I'd call anything free for the Bucks right now.
very
But
true.
yeah.
But Lakers and Warriors have been surging lately, and right now they're on pace to play in the play-in, which, as a LeBron guy and as a basketball fan of the 2010s, I would love to see another important playoff play-in matchup between LeBron and Curry. So
LeBron's 1-0 in
That would be
play
fun.
games.
That would be
True.
fun.
Curry.
he's the GOAT.
Yeah. Proves it right there.
Zach, final thoughts for us tonight.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Caitlin Clark. She's currently 8 points shy of breaking Kelsey Plum's NCAA scoring mark. So they actually play tonight against Michigan at 7 o'clock. I just want to give a shout out to her because she has completely revitalized women's sports. I don't think really anybody was watching women's college basketball until she showed up. And so I just want to give a shout out to her.
Yeah, she has revolutionized the game, and really has been a catalyst, like you said, for women's sports and women's basketball. Mason.
Kind of going back with our free agency / draft talk from the NFL earlier today, I believe that the one team that we did not talk about, paired with one player, that the Las Vegas Raiders are a good fit for current and Pro Bowl quarterback Gardner Minshew.
I mean, yeah, Gardner Minshew, I feel like kind of proved that he could be a starting caliber guy. But again, have we seen this before? Yes. Like we saw it with the Jags where like he took over, he did really good. He got to be a starter, and then he's like a Nick Foles kind of guy. It kinda reminds me of.
Pair it with Michael Penix.
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah. Who knows? Aiden O'Connell though too.
Yeah.
They got Aiden O'Connell. Yeah, he'll be an interesting one to watch as well. Baker Mayfield's another quarterback we didn't really talk about. I think the Bucs would keep him
He
around,
resigned there,
but yeah.
For sure.
That is all the time we have for today's show, though. So thank you for joining us on our Thursday edition of Hawk Talk. A lot to get to today. And next week, we got a fun exercise kind of specialty show, at least for part of the show coming up. That should be very exciting. So make sure you stay tuned for that. And join us again on Monday, Hawk Talk, Monday through Thursday, 5 to 6 p.m. on 91.7 The Edge, WSCW Whitewater, and UWW TV. Have a good night and a good weekend.
Yeah.